Welcome, House of the Dragon fans. I am back to cover season two. We are finally here. The big first episode of Sun for Sun. A lot to go over. Just to let you know, I'm recapping every single House of the Dragon episode this season, which will post probably the same night after the episode's premiere, if not by Monday morning. So let's get right into it. A Sun for Sun, name of the episode, shocking conclusion. War is upon us. And I think the two big themes that we've seen with this episode is number one, whether to embrace your vengeful impulses. And then the second one is the struggle between theory and reality. And the struggle, let's start with that second one, theory versus reality. War has already happened. As soon as Luke got chopped out of the sky in the season finale of season one, that's when war was upon us. But the Greens are not, it hasn't really sunk in for them, at least not all of them. For Alicent and Otto, they still think that they can do diplomacy. They're doing two things at once. On one hand, they're trying to gather banners for the green side to make sure they have the reinforcements, but also not trying to strike further. While they have advantages, as Aegon said, they have bigger dragons. Aemon has already laid out places where they could possibly attack, and they're still trying to hold back, thinking that there can be diplomacy and things can be worked out. Um, and that's where the big problems come in, even on the black side, because Damon wants to act immediately. When Rhaenys comes back, she's been patrolling, hasn't attacked anyone. Damon is like, we need to go right back up in the sky. Me and you can take Vhagar together. Let's go for it. He's embracing the reality of this is war at this point, and we need to strike now before more armies and more treaties are done or alliances are done, and then the body count rises, and then we have a prolonged unnecessary bloody war. That's Damon's mentality. Rhaenys, on the other hand, is like, no, number one, you're not the king. You're the queen's consort. I mean, you're the possibly the king, but you don't hold the power. Rhaenyra does. So only listen to Rhaenyra, number one. And then number two, at this point, you need to let the queen grieve, and I trust her judgment above anything. All respect to Rhaenyra, of course, a mother's grief is more pronounced probably than anything on this earth. But at the same time, I understand where Daemon is coming from because every single day counts while they're waiting. And I think Rhaenyra didn't realize, because she's wrapped up in her grief, you cannot leave Daemon to his own devices. When you tell him to do something, it has to be very detailed to the T. You can't give him any wiggle room or he's going to do what he wants to do. Because we know from season one, he constantly wants to assert his authority or what he thinks his authority is. He doesn't want to be under anyone's thumb. You saw all the antagonism he had with his brother Viserys when he was alive, and we see the tension now with his own wife. As much as he wants to support her, he wants to do his own thing at that. And his way of dealing with grief is to have vengeance. But unfortunately for him, his vengeance isn't completely thought out. I don't have a problem with the assassination per se of trying to go in and kill Aemon. That's a good idea. But as he mentioned, Aemon is a very skilled fighter. And if you're going to go in with assassins, they need to be top notch. And that is not what blood and cheese are. I might give it to blood a little bit as far as having the brute, but having someone at the forefront to lead the team had to be somebody with astute intelligence and discernment, and that is not cheese. We knew that from the moment he kicked the dog. He's just all in his emotions, not a clear thinker. And this was not very well thought out. This is going to have big ramifications, beheading an innocent son in front of the queen. That to me is going to turn, if not all of the realm, a good chunk of the realm against Rhaenyra. Those who are sympathetic with Luke's murder are going to be looking at this as this was kind of the worst retaliation that you can do. You can look at the majority of the people on the green side and say, well, they're not innocents per se. They're cogs in the war machine. Alicent, Otto, Aegon himself, the king. But if anyone were innocent on either side, the black side or the green side, it has to be Helaena. And for her to get terrorized like that, I think once that word spreads, hopefully we're going to see some scenes in episode 2 detailing how outraged the common folk are with this murder of Helena's son. Um, there's been some back and forth about that scene, whether it was done well. I personally liked it a lot. I think in situations like that, it's good to leave some of it to the imagination. I didn't need to see the child's head get chopped off, but hearing the sawing motion and knowing what was going on, that was good enough. And seeing the terror on Helena's face, I think the actress did a really good job of showing that and also detailing the shock that went through her. People deal with shock differently. Some people, when they go into shock, they'll scream, holler. That's a natural reaction, but it's also a natural reaction to freeze up, to not know what to do. And to see her running out of the room and not knowing what direction to really go in at first, and not knowing if blood or cheese was going to run after her and catch her. Very, very tense moments. I really kind of love that. And it showed you how isolated and dark that castle is, which is supposed to be your home, and how quickly your home can turn into a house of horrors when it's not protected. I think this episode also did a good job of showing that every reaction or every decision has a consequence. You can look at all of this as showing a consequence of the green side looking more towards theory than reality. The reality is you guys are at war. You need to shore all of your defenses up. That castle should have been a fortress. There should have been guards at every room after news came of Luke's dying. You had to know there was going to be some type of retaliation, whether it was poison, whether it was a dragon attack. There, you're sitting around coming up with ideas of how we can try and make this better when the inevitable, as Kriston said, is coming. War cannot be stopped at this point. They were woefully unprepared, not prepared. And then even on Kriston's side, you can't give him a pass because you're the head of the Kingsguard. When it comes to protection and all of that, you had to be at the forefront of that, and you weren't doing any of that. You were on your back getting serviced by the Queen while all this was going on. So the blame goes with them as well. And one other thing about Helena, as far as her being in shock, I want to bring people's attention to something you might think is unrelated. World War II, D-Day, the big invasion that we had on the beaches of Normandy. When that happened, if you read any of the accounts of that invasion on the beach, when they were getting cut down or trying to get away from the machine gun fire, the survivors, the soldiers from that, they mentioned that one of the things that was haunting to them was hearing their fellow soldiers crying out for their mothers. The soldiers that were dying, the majority of them wanted their mothers. And it makes sense because in your dying moments, what was the most comforting times of your life? Probably the love of your mother, because a mother's love is unconditional. So I bring that up to reference back to Helena, her being in shock. Where did she go? She could have kept running, but she went where? To her mother's chamber, because even as a daughter, in a situation like that of extreme stress and trauma, where you're going to feel most comfort in is your mother. And that's where she went. And it wasn't really comfort that she saw, so she was doubly traumatized in seeing her mother sleeping with the head of the Kingsguard. So that was, I really hope we get more scenes with Helena next episode. One of the things, if you look at my recaps from last season, I said Helena was one of my favorite characters, and I feel one of the keys to the series. She kind of foreshadows everything that's going on. So hopefully, when we hear her mutterings and her sayings next episode, if we get some scenes with her, she'll be foreshadowing what's to come. I don't think they're going to give away too much. It'll probably be something kind of basic about more bloodshed is coming, but maybe she'll give some insight into her husband, his next moves, and what type of slaughters we can anticipate. I'm thinking it's going to be Dragonfire. That's going to be the big retaliation. And maybe we'll get a dragon battle. Maybe Rhaenys and either Aemon or I don't think Aegon will put himself in danger. So maybe it'll be a confrontation between Aemon and Rhaenys. I think the big battle with, of course, we want to see that was foreshadowed in last season will be Aemon and Daemon. They're obviously the two best fighters on the opposing side, but I don't think we could do this early. If we do, it'll just be a tease where they almost get close to each other, but don't quite make it to each other. But I do think maybe we'll see a Rhaenys and Aemon battle or some type of dragon battle on that front. So I'm looking forward to that. We finally are getting to see more and more of the dragons. So hopefully they'll be engaging in warfare very, very soon. Also, another thing, as far as Alicent goes, talking about her, I think now with this killing in their home, her and Otto are going to get closer. We saw that there was tension this episode because of they feel like they're not on the same page. Number one, Alicent feels like her father is undermining her authority, and Alicent wants to keep her son in check. She was very one of the main factors in why he's in the position he is now on the throne. So she feels that she can still control him, but she's learning, as with any young man or any child, once they get older, they want to assert their authority and get out from under the thumb of their parents. So she's finding herself getting ostracized more and more as she tries to hold on to this diplomacy. But now with this war going on, clearly, with Aemon suffering the embarrassment of having a son get killed under his roof, and now probably the subjects, while they're sympathizing and outraged, with this murder, they're also going to be looking at their king as, can you really protect this realm? You can't protect your own family. So he's going to be humiliated, and he's going to want to strike out and get that vengeance, that vengeful impulse that I talked about earlier. He's going to fully embrace it. And because of that, I don't think he's going to be listening to Alicent or Otto. So I think those two, Alicent and Otto, they're going to have to combine their forces and try and figure out a way to get either Aegon's ear back or get Aemon's ear. And I think it's going to be very, very difficult. I don't think either of them are going to be listening to them for the next couple episodes. And that brings me to my favorite person in the shadows, Loras, the Littlefinger of this time. He did two important things this episode that stood out. Number one, he spoke with Alicent and pretty much let her know in coded language, I know everything that you're doing, particularly with Kriston. It was a veiled threat, so to speak. He's still in her corner right now, still enamored with her, but I want to know, or I'm interested in seeing how much of his jealousy takes over, because obviously all he was getting is looking at feet, and Kriston is getting the whole shebang. He's getting Alicent every which way he wants. So I know that's not sitting well with Laura. So we're gonna have to see what he does and how much he's willing to reveal. It wouldn't surprise me if he tries to get Kriston out the paint some type of way, because we saw later in the episode he's trying to get the king's ear now. He sees that Aegon is dissatisfied with Otto, and he's gunning for that hand position. And if he gets in that spot, his power will be unequal, and he can pretty much do whatever he wants. But I want to see how he approaches, if he gets to that position, how he approaches the battle against the blacks, because so far we've been seeing how he can handle and sway things within King's Landing, but can he deal with things away from home, a war on the field? Can he manipulate that and still be successful? We saw eventually Littlefinger did too much scheming and got himself killed. Will Larez be smarter than that? That's what we'll have to see. I don't think he will be, because I think his emotions are too wrapped up with Alicent, and I think he'll make a mistake there. Wouldn't surprise me if Kriston is actually the one that catches on to that and takes him out himself, because Kriston has to protect his position as well, and I don't think he'll let anything endanger that. Particularly since he's on good terms with Aemon. If it gets put out there that he's sleeping with the queen, all that goes out the window. So I think at that point, if it gets in danger of that happening, Alicent will sick Kriston on Lars to protect her secrets, or their secrets. Speaking of Kriston, a lot of people hate him. He's always been an interesting character to me. I think what's funny is that looking at his situation now, where he's basically, you know, um, a boy toy for the queen, or for, for not for the queen, but for Alicent. Uh, he's finally accepted his position, because you saw how upset he was when Rhaenyra kind of offered the same thing. He was just so taken aback by that. I love you. How can you make me like want to live in shame like this? And now, years later, he's kind of like, all right, this isn't so bad. I can accept it at this point. So he's kind of come to the reality of his situation. And it's really interesting how we view things differently depending on gender, Because if his name were Christina Cole, we might be looking at this as a kind of a predatory relationship where, a person in power is using that position to take advantage of someone lesser than them. Because even though he's the head of the Kingsguard, Allison is in the power position. He kind of has to do what she wants to a degree. Not that he might not have initiated this, or is helpless, but there's still a difference in power dynamics. But because he's a man, we don't look at it like that. So I want to see how much more Chris does to kind of assert his authority, so to speak. Right now, he's kind of the queen's voice to a degree. But now after this killing, how much is he going to listen to the queen? Because, when they were in the throne room and, Allison looked at him, he kind of concurred with her to the king that you don't need to put yourself in danger. We don't need you on the battlefield yet. But now, now it's warfare. Now theory is out the window. Theory versus reality. We're dealing in reality now. There's no more diplomacy. There has to be war, and there has to be quick decisions made on the battlefield to try and take the other side out before they gain too much strength and too many allies. So we are at a very, very interesting point. And I think one of the things I also want to see this season is how much of the common people are affected by these games that the elites are playing. We saw countless common folk killed when Rhaenys broke out of prison. And we're going to see countless more when the Dragonfire rains down. So unlike the original Game of Thrones, I want to see hopefully more of the civilians kind of having their voice heard and their outrage heard against, either side. I think it would be good to have a representative for them. I think right now we kind of have Mysaria to a degree. Um, she's not representing the common folk as a leader, but she's kind of an example of someone being kind of squeezed by both sides. The only power she can find is, giving herself to whoever has the most power at that given moment, which she did with Daemon and giving up Helena's location. So I want to see hopefully a leader emerge, kind of maybe like a revolutionary type figure or a militant type figure that's representing the common people and maybe goes to war on both sides, doesn't have allegiance to Team Black or Team Green, and it's kind of a thorn in both their sides, kind of a leader that's tired of the common folk being abused by both of them. I don't think it'll last long because I'm assuming that common leader wouldn't have a dragon, but at least it can kind of show and give a face to what just regular people are going through, dealing with these games that the elites are playing, for the crown. So I'm very happy so far with what we got with this initial episode. One other thing I want to say, actually about the Blood and Cheese segment, I know there were some people that were disappointed from what I was seeing online, saying that it was hyped up too much. And this is where I think the book readers did the show watchers a disservice, because Blood and Cheese should not have been compared whatsoever to the Red Wedding at all. And the big reason why is because with the Red Wedding, we had, what was that, season 4 or season 5? We basically had 40 to 50 hours of buildup with those particular characters, with Robb Stark, Catelyn, Mother, everyone, before we got to that point. So there was an emotional level that Blood and Cheese could never reach because we haven't had that much TV with the House of the Dragon characters. Things are moving a lot quicker, which is a good thing to a degree, because, we also had an issue with the original Game of Thrones with some things being dragged out, and then when the conclusion happened, it wasn't satisfying. So I can see why, a lot of us are enjoying things moving a lot quicker, but because we didn't have that buildup, there's no way that Blood and Cheese could have that emotional impact that the Red Wedding had. Jaehaerys, who was killed, we basically met him earlier in the episode, playing in the war room with Aegon and Tywin. So his death, even though we can feel emotion from seeing a child get murdered, is not going to hit the same as Robb dying and seeing his pregnant wife get killed. After knowing these characters for hours and hours and seasons, it's not going to have the same emotional weight. Same thing with Helaena. As much as, a lot of us empathize with her or are intrigued by her character, she hasn't even been in every episode. So it's not going to have the same weight that the Red Wedding had. So I think the book readers hinting at this being as horrible as the Red Wedding and maybe making comparisons to that online, I think unwittingly did a disservice to the show watchers, hyping it up that type of way. It was a horror, but it was a different type of horror. So hopefully book readers will calm down a little bit and not kind of hint at more things like that and let the show stand on its own. But I know that's difficult. We can say that, but the best thing I can say for the show watchers, really just mute things online until the show airs. That's pretty much all you can do. Because if not, somebody's going to spoil it. The books have been out for so long, somebody's not going to hold their tongue. But that's all I have for this episode. I am patiently awaiting episode 2. I keep saying I'm about to wrap this up and I'm thinking of something else. So as far as the one-liners go, I'm going to give Eamon the crown. He had a lot of lines in this episode that resonated with me. He talked about words are wind. I think that was very appropriate, talking about the theory versus reality thing. I think he was spot on about that. He also talked about, what other line did he have? I think I wrote it down. Her grace speaks with two tongues, talking about his mother, saying that to Kristan, kind of had a double meaning in his mind that Aemon wouldn't be aware of. But I thought that was another great line. But probably the most poignant, talking about his mother, he said about her is that she still has love for our enemy, talking about Rhaenyra, and because of that, it makes her a fool. That's why she couldn't see what was coming, because she still has love for Rhaenyra. And I think in a way, she has more love for Rhaenyra now because she can empathize with the scandal that went on before. Remember in the first season, there was that scandal about Rhaenyra. I think it was her and Daemon, her um, sleeping around and not being married. And Alicent was so disgusted and she confronted Rhaenyra about that. Like, how could you do that? And Rhaenyra lied to her face, but she kind of had to at that point because as a woman, it's not permissible for you to be promiscuous in this society. It just would not fly. But now on the other side of the equation, I think Alicent understands with her relationship that she has with Kristan now and wanting to just be embraced as a woman and feel um will not feel indulge in her sexual desires now. I think she understands what Rhaenyra was feeling. She's just, being able to experience that later in life. But now she understands. So I think she's understanding more Rhaenyra's predicament now, but it's too late. There's no more diplomacy. There's nothing to talk about. It has to be war at this point. So one of the good things is that it should be war for the rest of the season. Honestly, this storyline, there shouldn't be anything else. There really shouldn't be any period of peace. So a lot more deaths, a lot more killing. Whoever comes out on top, I don't think there is going to be a coming out on top because in theory they're both family, Team Green and Team Black. So I think they're going to destroy each other basically. I think the majority of them are going to be wiped out, and it's just going to be a bloodbath. And yeah, can't wait to see it. So let me know what you guys think, and I will be back here to cover episode 2 late Sunday night, early Monday morning, and we'll just keep going. Just make sure you turn on your notifications, like and subscribe, and I'll be making sure to give you more content throughout the season. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you guys next week.